Has you ever wondered why some people seem to achieve, well, extraordinary things? Building incredible careers or bodies or relationships, while others, despite their best intentions, they struggle. They get caught in that cycle of wanting to change but just never quite getting there. What are those hidden forces, those invisible threads that kind of weave through our daily lives, often determining our destiny without us even realizing it? Okay, so today we're taking a deep dive into something that touches, well, every single part of our lives, our habits. We're exploring some truly remarkable insights that basically flip conventional wisdom about change right on its head. This comes from an expert source on the science of habit formation.
Yeah, and it's not just about what habits are, it's about how you can actually design them to work for you.
Exactly. Transforming your life through these, well, surprisingly potent, small actions.
It's pretty amazing how seemingly tiny actions, when you understand them and leverage them correctly, hold just immense power. Our mission today really is to reveal the fundamental laws governing human behavior. We want to help you understand not just what habits are, but why they matter so much.
And crucially, how you can truly design them to work for you.
Right. We'll explore the surprisingly potent nature of what are called atomic habits, those tiny, almost irreducible units of behavior that, when they compound, become this source of immense energy and power in your life.
And our journey into habits really starts with a powerful personal story.
Yeah.
James Clear, the author of our core material today, faced this life-altering baseball accident back in 2002. He was hit directly in the face with a bat.
Just horrific.
Yeah, battled severe injuries, including a medically induced coma, broken bones. He even struggled with just basic movement after waking up.
And his comeback, it wasn't about some grand gesture, was it?
Not at all. It was this slow, really painstaking process of rebuilding one tiny habit at a time. It's actually a perfect real-world example of that atomic principle we're talking about.
Indeed. And his family, they'd already faced huge challenges. Just a decade before, his younger sister battled leukemia in that exact same hospital. So it highlights this deep, kind of inherent family resilience,
That's true.
But it was James's personal struggle that really forced him to confront the power of the incremental. Even when life strips everything away, those consistent, tiny actions, they're the true building blocks of recovery and, well, transformation.
His return to baseball a year later was, by all accounts, pretty humiliating. Despite this lifelong dream of playing professionally, he got cut from the varsity team. Yeah, ended up playing only 11 innings in high school.
Yeah.
But what came next was honestly extraordinary. Over the following years, he completely transformed himself. Went from like a featherweight, 170 pounds, to a lean 200 pounds.
Wow.
Eventually became team captain and all-conference selection. And this wasn't through some single monumental effort. It was simply by making it a habit to lift weights multiple times a week, day in, day out.
It's such a powerful illustration of atomic in action, that tiny, irreducible unit, yet it holds this source of immense energy and power.
So that term atomic is really key here, isn't it?
Absolutely. It refers to, well, an extremely small amount of something, right? The single irreducible unit of a larger system, but also, critically, the source of immense energy or power. And a habit itself is just, a routine or a behavior performed regularly, often automatically.
And the connection between these atomic units and that immense power, that's what the author calls the compounding effect of habits.
That's right. Think about it like this. If you improve by just 1% each day, just 1% by the end of a year, you'll actually be nearly 37 times better. It's incredible.
37 times.
Conversely, though, those 1% errors day after day, maybe replicating poor decisions or, rationalizing little excuses, they accumulate into genuinely toxic results. Like chronic procrastination, for instance.
That compounding effect is almost hard to wrap your head around sometimes. It's like that airplane analogy you hear about.
Exactly. A tiny degree shift on takeoff, maybe just 3.5 degrees leaving LA for New York, and you end up landing in Washington, D.C., hundreds of miles off course, all because of that tiny initial difference compounding over the journey.
So what makes those seemingly insignificant 1% changes so incredibly powerful in the long run?
Well, fundamentally, time acts as a multiplier. Good habits make time your ally. They help you achieve things far beyond what you might initially imagine. Bad habits, though, they make time your enemy, cutting you down just as easily.
And this applies everywhere, right? Not just fitness or something?
Oh, absolutely. Across the board. Productivity compounds. Accomplishing one extra task daily might seem small, but over a career, it adds up significantly. Knowledge compound, Warren Buffett talks about this all the time.
Right, the compound interest of knowledge.
Exactly. Each book you read doesn't just teach you something new. It opens up different ways of thinking about old ideas. It builds on itself. And even relationships compound. The more you help others, often the more they want to help you. You build this network of broad, strong connections over time, just through small, consistent acts of kindness.
And this idea of compounding, it really explains why progress often feels so, well, frustratingly nonlinear. Especially that ice cube analogy and the plateau of latent potential. We expect immediate results for our efforts, don't we? But that's rarely how it works.
Precisely. Imagine an ice cube in a cold room, say 25 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature slowly rises, 26, 27, 30, 31. Nothing visible happens.
Right, you're putting in the work, warming the room, but the ice is still ice.
Exactly. You've been putting in the effort, but no visible results. Then you hit 32 degrees, and the ice begins to melt. That 1 degree shift, seemingly no different from the ones before it, has unlocked this huge change.
So that illustrates the plateau of latent potential.
Perfectly. You might put in weeks or months of hard work, practicing an instrument, studying a language, building a business, and see no visible results. This often leads to what the author calls the valley of disappointment.
Yeah, you feel discouraged thinking, what's the point? My efforts are wasted.
But that work isn't wasted. It's being stored, accumulating below the surface, just like the temperature rising for that ice cube. The full value of your efforts is only revealed much later, after you cross that critical tipping point, that 32-degree mark.
Okay, so if progress isn't linear and the results are often delayed, where should we actually be focusing our energy? This seems to lead us away from traditional goal setting and towards something deeper.
It really does. One of the fundamental problems with a goals-first mentality is that achieving a goal only changes your life for that moment. We often mistakenly believe the results themselves are the problem, like, I need to lose weight.
Right, we focus on the outcome.
But the results are merely symptoms. What we truly need to change are the systems that cause those results. If you only fix a problem at the results level, maybe you go on a crash diet, it's usually a temporary fix. For lasting improvement, you have to solve problems at the systems level. Fix the inputs, and the outputs will fix themselves.
And it also highlights how a singular focus on goals can actually restrict our happiness, can it?
Yeah.
If your joy is tied solely to achieving that specific outcome, you're constantly putting off contentment until you hit the target.
That's a crucial point. And what happens after you achieve it is the motivation just gone.
Yeah, what then?
A goal-oriented mindset can create what's called a yo-yo effect. Think of runners who train incredibly hard for months for a marathon. But as soon as they cross that finish line, what often happens?
So you stop training, the big event is over.
Exactly. The race is no longer there to motivate them, and they often revert to their old habits. When all your hard work is focused on a particular goal, what pushes you forward after it's achieved? This is precisely why a systems-first mentality provides the antidote.
So it's about falling in love with the process.
Yes. When you fall in love with the process rather than just the product, you don't have to wait for permission to be happy. You can be satisfied anytime your system is running. And a system can be successful in many different forms, not just the one you initially envisioned.
Okay, so if goals aren't really the answer and systems are the solution, how does this profoundly shift our focus? From what we want to achieve to who we're actually becoming, what's the true power of these identity-based habits?
Our self-image plays a huge role here. We often hear ourselves or others say things like, oh, I'm terrible with directions, or I'm just not a morning person, or I'm always late.
Yeah, we label ourselves.
And when you repeat those stories to yourself for years, it's so easy to slide into those mental grooves and just accept them as fact. Over time, you actually begin to resist certain actions because, well, that's not who I am. There's this internal pressure to maintain your self-image, to behave in a way that's consistent with your beliefs. You find ways to avoid contradicting yourself.
But the really hopeful thing about this is that identity isn't fixed.
Right.
It's this gradual evolution.
Absolutely.
We don't change by just snapping our fingers and deciding, okay, I'm an entirely new person now. We change bit by bit, day by day, habit by habit. We're continually undergoing these micro evolutions of the self. And every single action you take is like a vote for the type of person you want to become.
Yeah.
If you finish reading a book, that's a vote suggesting, hey, maybe I'm the type of person who likes reading.
Right.
If you go to the gym, even when you don't feel like it, that's a vote that says, I'm the type of person who prioritizes health. Each habit is like a little suggestion. Hey, maybe this is who I am.
So the really profound question to ask yourself is, are you becoming the type of person you want to become? Identity change is truly the North Star of habit change. It's not primarily about what you want to achieve or even how you're going to do it. It's about who you want to be.
Your identity emerges directly out of your habits.
Precisely. The real reason habits matter isn't just for the tangible results they can produce, although they absolutely can do that, no question. It's because they fundamentally change your beliefs about yourself. You quite literally become your habits.
So there are those three levels of change.
Yeah.
Outcome, process, and identity.
Yes. Outcome change is what you get, like losing weight. Process change is what you do, like following a specific diet or exercise routine. But identity change is what you believe, like seeing yourself as a healthy person. And the most effective way to change your habits, long term, is to focus not on the outcome, but on who you wish to become.
Okay, so if identity is the North Star, guiding everything, how do we actually go about building these habits that shape us? That brings us to the real mechanics, the backbone of habit formation, this four-step model that underpins basically every behavior we have.
Yeah, this framework has deep roots in classic psychology. Back in 1898, a psychologist named Edward Thorndike did this famous experiment with cats in puzzle boxes.
Right, the cat's trying to get out.
Exactly. The cats would eventually learn to escape by performing some simple act, maybe pulling a cord or pressing a lever. Through trial and error, they learned that certain behaviors led to satisfying consequences, getting out and maybe getting a treat. And those behaviors were more likely to be repeated. This became known as the law of effect.
So habits are basically mental shortcuts learned from experience.
In essence, yes. A habit is just a memory of the steps you previously followed to solve a problem in the past. Your brain's primary reason for remembering the past isn't nostalgia. It's to better predict what will work in the future.
It sounds like once these habit loops get wired in, our brains become incredibly efficient. Is that part of their power? That they free up our, cognitive load for more complex stuff?
Absolutely. The conscious mind is a bottleneck. Habits reduce that cognitive load, freeing up mental capacity for essential tasks, for creativity, for problem solving. And all habits proceed through 4 stages, always in the same order. Cue, craving, response, and reward. This 4-step pattern, it's the backbone of every single habit.
Okay, let's break those down. First, the cue.
Right. The cue is the trigger. It's a bit of information that predicts a reward and initiates the behavior. Our prehistoric ancestors were highly attuned to cues signaling primary rewards, things like food, water, sex, essential for survival.
But today, our cues are often predicting secondary rewards.
Exactly. Things like money, fame, power, status, praise, approval from others, or even just that internal sense of personal satisfaction. Your phone buzzing is a cue. Seeing a notification icon is a cue. Walking past a coffee shop can be a cue.
Okay, then after the cue comes the craving.
The craving. This is the motivational force behind the habit. It's the anticipation of the reward. It's crucial to understand it's not necessarily about liking the reward in the moment itself, but the intense wanting of it. That's what drives us to act.
And this wanting is heavily tied to dopamine, right? That neurotransmitter.
Oh, massively. Groundbreaking experiments back in the 1950s by James Olds and Peter Milner showed this clearly. When they blocked dopamine pathways in rats, the rats basically lost all will to act. They wouldn't even seek out food or water. They just curled up.
Wow.
But when they artificially flooded the rats' reward systems with dopamine, they'd perform actions like pressing a lever at incredible speeds hundreds of times an hour.
So dopamine isn't just about pleasure. It's about motivation.
That's the key insight, yes. Dopamine surges not just when we get a reward, but primarily when we anticipate one. That rush you feel before placing a bet, or when you see your favorite food being prepared. That's dopamine kicking in. This anticipation is the true engine that drives behavior.
Which explains why sometimes the anticipation feels better than the actual thing. Like Christmas morning excitement versus opening the gifts.
Precisely. Or daydreaming about a vacation versus actually being on it. Scientists call this the difference between wanting and liking. And the sensitivity of this dopamine response is critical for learning. If a reward is expected but doesn't materialize, dopamine levels drop, signaling disappointment and telling the brain, hey, maybe don't do that next time. But if the reward comes, especially if it's a bit unexpected or better than anticipated, it reinforces that connection, making you more likely to repeat the behavior.
Okay, so cue triggers the brain, craving provides the motivation, then comes the response.
The response is simply the actual habit you perform. It could be a thought or an action, grabbing your phone, biting your nails, drinking coffee, walking into the kitchen. It's the action itself.
And finally, the reward.
The reward. This is the end goal of every habit, and it serves two critical purposes. First, it satisfies your craving. It delivers that feeling of relief or pleasure you were anticipating. Second, and just as important, it teaches your brain which actions are worth remembering and repeating in the future. Ah, that felt good. Let's do that again when the cue appears.
So rewards can be immediate, like the burst of energy from food.
Or delayed, like a promotion at work bringing more money and respect, or getting in shape, improving your health, and maybe your dating prospects over time. The immediate benefit, though, is that they deliver contentment and relief from the craving right now.
Okay, let's walk through some everyday examples just to make this loop super clear. Your phone buzzes.
That's the cue.
You want to know who messaged you or what the notification is?
That's the craving.
You grab your phone and look at the screen.
A response.
And you satisfy that little itch of curiosity, associating grabbing your phone with the buzz.
That's the reward. Loop complete.
Okay, or how about this? You're answering stressful work emails. You start feeling overwhelmed, maybe anxious, and you want to feel more in control or just less stressed.
Craving.
You find yourself biting your nails without really thinking about it.
Response.
And maybe provides a tiny momentary distraction or release, satisfying that craving to reduce stress. So you associate nail biting with tackling tough email.
Reward. Another loop closed.
One more. You wake up in the morning.
Cue.
You want to feel alert, shake off the grogginess.
Craving.
You make and drink a cup of coffee.
Response.
And you satisfy that craving to feel alert, reinforcing the connection between waking up and coffee.
Reward. It's everywhere once you start looking for it.
Right?
Even smelling a donut shop as you walk by cue. Craving a donut craving. Buying and eating it response. Satisfying the craving reward.
So by breaking habits down into these 4 stages, cue, craving, response, reward, we can actually start to influence them, right? We can ask ourselves specific questions based on these stages.
Exactly. This gives us the 4 laws of behavior change, which are essentially levers we can pull. Whenever you want to change your behavior, you can simply ask yourself, 1, how can I make the cue obvious? 2, how can I make the craving attractive? 3, how can I make the response easy? 4, and how can I make the reward satisfying?
And the flip side works for breaking bad habits too, right?
Yeah.
Make the cue invisible, the craving unattractive, the response difficult, and the reward unsatisfying.
Precisely. Any goal, any attempt at change is really doomed to fail if it goes against the grain of human nature. So understanding and tweaking these fundamental laws to work for you, that's the real key to creating good habits that stick and breaking the bad ones that hold you back.
Okay, so with that framework cue, craving, response, reward, let's dive into the first law, make it obvious. This sounds simple enough, but you mentioned earlier it can be surprisingly tricky because so many of our habits operate below the level of conscious awareness.
That's exactly the challenge. Over time, the cues that trigger our habits become so common, so routine, they're essentially invisible to us. Think about the treats just sitting there on the kitchen counter, or the TV remote always next to the couch, or your phone constantly buzzing in your pocket.
Yeah, you just react automatically.
Right. Our responses to these cues get so deeply encoded that the urge to act can feel like it comes from absolutely nowhere. This is why, before we can effectively build new habits, we need awareness of our current ones. A lot of our performance failures, honestly, are largely due to a simple lack of self-awareness.
It's like those stories you hear about experienced professionals who can spot something wrong without consciously knowing exactly why. Like a paramedic seeing a tiny facial change that signals an impending heart attack, even when the patient feels fine.
Or a military analyst identifying an enemy missile amidst hundreds of friendly blips on a radar screen, even though they look almost identical to the untrained eye. Or a museum curator spotting a fake artifact.
Right. These are people whose brains have cataloged thousands of cues over years until the recognition becomes almost subliminal.
Exactly. The human brain is, at its core, a prediction machine. It's constantly taking in your surroundings, analyzing information, filtering out the noise, and learning what's important, what predicts what. When you experience something repeatedly, your brain starts highlighting the relevant cues and cataloging that info for future use. So if you want to change your behavior, you first have to become aware of these often invisible cues that are driving it.
So how do we do that practically? How do we bring these unconscious habits into the light?
A really good, simple way to start is with something called a habit scorecard. You literally just write down all your daily habits, waking up, brushing teeth, checking phone, making coffee, commuting, etc. Then, next to each one, you simply note whether you consider it a good habit, plus a bad habit, or a neutral habit.
Just the act of listing them out forces you to notice things you might otherwise ignore.
Precisely. It brings awareness to what you're actually doing throughout the day, not just what you think you're doing.
Okay, so once we shine a light on these invisible cues and become more aware, the next logical step in changing our behavior becomes clearer. How do we make the right actions, the cues for our desired habits, impossible to miss? This leads us directly to the first strategy under Make It Obvious: implementation intentions.
Yes. An implementation intention isn't just saying, I want to exercise more. It's about making a very specific plan for when and where a new habit will occur. It takes the vagueness out and replaces it with concrete commitment.
So it's more than just a goal, it's a pre-planned decision. What's the formula for it?
The formula is simple and powerful. I will behavior at time and location. For example, instead of I'll meditate, you'd say, I will meditate for 1 minute at 7 a.m. in my living room. Or I will exercise for 1 hour at 5:00 p.m. in my local gym.
So an implementation intention basically takes the decision-making load off you in the moment. How significant is that in actually helping us overcome procrastination or inertia and follow through?
It's profoundly significant. The research backs this up strongly. One study on exercise, for instance, found that 91% of people who made a specific plan for when and where they would exercise actually followed through at least once per week.
Wow, 91% compared to what for those without a plan?
Compared to only 35 to 38% in the control groups who didn't specify time and place, similar results have been seen with things like getting people to schedule colonoscopies or even increasing voter turnout. By making your intentions concrete, you remove the need for that moment-to-moment decision, which is exactly where willpower often fails us. You're essentially telling your future self exactly what to do, where, and when.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, the next powerful strategy is habit stacking. This builds on the idea that really no behavior happens in isolation, right? Each action often acts as a cue for the next one. Like the Diderot effect, you buy a new dress and suddenly you need new shoes and earrings to match. Or you buy a new couch and suddenly the whole living room layout needs redoing. It's this chain reaction.
Precisely. Our behaviors work very similarly. Habit stacking leverages this natural tendency. You identify a current habit you already do each day without fail, like brushing your teeth or pouring your morning coffee, and then you stack your desired new behavior right on top of it.
So the existing habit becomes the cue for the new one.
Exactly. This method, which was really popularized by B.J. Fogg as his tiny habits recipe, provides an obvious, already established cue for almost any new habit. The formula is, after current habit, I will new habit.
I find this incredibly practical. So examples could be, after I pour my cup of coffee each morning, I will meditate for 1 minute.
Perfect.
Or after I take off my work shoes when I get home, I will immediately change into my workout clothes.
Yes.
Even something simple like, after I sit down to dinner, I will say one thing I'm grateful for that happened today. You're basically hijacking the momentum of an existing routine.
You are. And you can even chain multiple habits together into a longer routine. Your morning habit stack might become, after I pour my morning cup of coffee, I will meditate for 60 seconds. After I meditate for 60 seconds, I will write my to-do list for the day. After I write my to-do list, I will immediately begin my first task. It creates a set of simple rules that guide your future behavior almost automatically.
And you can develop general habit stacks too, right? Not just tied to a specific time.
Absolutely. For instance, when I see a set of stairs, I will take them instead of using the elevator. Or for social skills, when I walk into a party, I will introduce myself to someone I don't know yet, even for finances. When I want to buy something over $100, I will wait 24 hours before purchasing. The key is always making the desired action the natural, obvious next step after a reliable cue.
Okay, this all ties beautifully into the third strategy for making cues obvious, environment design. This is about recognizing we're not just victims of our environment, but we can actually be the architects of it.
Yes. The environment is truly the invisible hand shaping so much of human behavior. There is a famous equation from psychologist Kurt Lewin. Behavior is a function of the person and their environment, or B equals FPE. It highlights that certain behaviors just naturally arise again and again under specific environmental conditions.
Like how people tend to whisper in a church or a library.
Exactly. Or how you might act more wary walking down a dark street late at night. Often, the most common changes in our behavior aren't driven by some massive internal shift, but simply by changes in the world around us. Think about retail environment.
Oh yeah, supermarkets are masters of this.
Totally. Back in 1952, Hawkins Stern talked about suggestion impulse buying. Customers buy products often not because they want them in a deep sense, but because of how they are presented. Items at eye level get purchased more. Those end caps at the end of aisles, they're absolute money-making machines for retailers.
I read something like 45% of Coca-Cola sales come just from those end-of-aisle racks.
It's staggering, isn't it? The most obvious option frequently wins. It's why Bud Light seems to be in every bar and Starbucks on seemingly every corner. We like to think we're totally in control, but many of our daily actions are simply shaped by the option that is most obvious and accessible.
And our sense of vision plays a massive role here, doesn't it? Given how much of our brain power is dedicated to processing visual information.
Hugely. Humans have about 11 million sensory receptors, and roughly 10 million of those are dedicated just to sight. Some experts even estimate that half of our brain's resources are used on vision. So it follows that even a small change in what you see can lead to a really big shift in what you do. Visual cues are the greatest catalyst for our behavior.
Can you give an example of how a subtle environmental shift worked in practice?
Oh, a great one is Anne Thorndike's study at Massachusetts General Hospital. She was a physician there and wanted to improve eating habits in the hospital cafeteria, but without nagging people or relying on willpower.
Okay, so what did she do?
She simply rearranged the drinks. Originally, the refrigerators near the cash registers only contained soda. She added water as an option in those main refrigerators. Then, she placed additional baskets of bottled water next to the food stations throughout the room. She didn't say a word to anyone.
And the result?
Over 3 months, soda sales dropped by 11.4%, while bottled water sales increased by a whopping 25.8%, all achieved simply by making the healthier choice more visible and convenient.
That's incredible. No posters, no lectures, just changing the layout.
Exactly. Another classic, maybe slightly humorous example is the sticker of a fly placed inside the urinals at Amsterdam Schiphol Airport.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one. To improve aim.
Precisely. It reportedly cut bathroom cleaning costs by 8% just by giving men a visual target. It channeled behavior in the desired direction by making the right action obvious.
So the takeaway is, if you want to make a habit a big part of your life, you need to make the cue for that habit a big part of your environment.
Yes. It's about consciously sprinkling triggers for your good habits throughout your everyday surroundings. Just like a smoker might have multiple cues prompting them to light up, finishing a meal, getting in the car, feeling stressed, you want to create multiple obvious cues for the behaviors you want to cultivate. Make the best choice, the most obvious one.
And this also means being really mindful of context, doesn't it? Habits get associated not just with a single trigger, but with the entire context surrounding the behavior.
Absolutely. We tend to drink more in social situations than alone, for example. We mentally assign our habits to specific locations. The office is for work, the gym is for exercise, the couch is for relaxation. For one person, the couch might be where they read every night. For someone else, that same couch is where they automatically reach for the remote and maybe a bowl of ice cream. Same place, different associated habits based on context.
Which implies we should probably try to avoid mixing context too much, especially with modern technology. Our phones are a perfect example. They can be for productivity, but also social media distractions, email, games. It's a total mishmash of cues.
And that's a real problem. If you try to use the same device or the same space for wildly different types of habits, one productive, one distracting stuff, you'll start mixing the habits, and the easier, more instantly gratifying ones will usually win out. If your phone is your portal to both work email and TikTok, guess which one often pulls you in when you pick it up without a clear intention?
Yeah, the path of least resistance. So having dedicated spaces or maybe even dedicated devices for certain tasks can be really powerful for habit formation.
It can be incredibly powerful. It creates a clear environmental signal for the intended behavior. This space is for work. This chair is for reading. This device is for communication, not endless scrolling. It makes the cue obvious and reduces conflicting signals.
Okay, so we've covered making cues obvious. Now let's move to the second law. Make it attractive. It feels like our brains are just hardwired for certain rewards, and modern society has gotten unbelievably good at amplifying those rewards, sometimes to our detriment.
Oh, it's absolutely true. We live in a world that's jam-packed with what scientists call supernormal stimuli. These are essentially highly engineered, exaggerated versions of reality that are far more attractive to our primal brains than anything our ancestors ever evolved to encounter.
Like what kind of things?
Well, think of mannequins in shop windows with impossible proportions, or the instant gratification of likes and notifications on social media. Think about online pornography offering stimulation impossible to replicate in real life, or food advertising using perfect lighting, styling, and maybe even Photoshop to make processed food look incredibly appealing.
They're hijacking our natural preferences.
Exactly. These stimuli exaggerate features that are naturally attractive to us, signs of health, social approval, novelty, calorie density, and our ancient instincts just go wild in response. Junk food is a much more concentrated source of salt, sugar, and fat than natural foods. Hard liquor delivers a more concentrated dose of alcohol than fermented fruit might have. Video games offer more intense, immediate feedback loops of challenge and reward than, say, playing tag outside. We basically have the brains of our ancestors, but we're facing temptations they never ever had to deal with.
Wow. So if we're constantly bombarded by these highly engineered temptations designed to grab our attention and trigger cravings, how on earth do we make our good habits, the ones that often have delayed benefits, seem irresistible in comparison? What's the biological signature they all need to tap into?
That signature fundamentally is the dopamine-driven feedback loop. We touched on dopamine earlier. It's that crucial neurotransmitter involved in so many things: motivation, learning, memory, even punishment and voluntary movement.
Right. And the key was that it's released when you anticipate pleasure, not just when you experience it.
Precisely. Remember those rat experiments? Blocking dopamine made them lose the will to live, essentially. Flooding their brains with it turned them into habit machines. This highlights that desire, driven by the anticipation of a reward, is the real engine that drives behavior. Every action we take is ultimately because of the prediction, the anticipation that precedes it. And the greater the anticipation, the greater the dopamine spike, and the stronger the motivation to act.
So to make our good habits stick, we need to make them attractive enough to generate that anticipation, that dopamine spike.
Yes. The expectation of a rewarding experience is what motivates us to act in the first place. If a habit isn't attractive, if we don't anticipate some form of satisfaction from it, we simply won't have the motivation to do it, especially when faced with easier, more immediately attractive alternatives.
Okay, so how do we engineer that attractiveness? One really clever way seems to be temptation bundling.
Ah, yes. Temptation bundling is a fantastic strategy. It's basically about pairing an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
Like that engineering student in Dublin, Ronan Byrne.
Exactly. He loved watching Netflix, but knew he really needed to exercise more. So what did he do? He hacked his stationary bike and connected it to his laptop. Netflix would only play if he was cycling at a certain minimum speed.
Seriously, so if he slowed down.
The show paused. He brilliantly linked the thing he wanted, watching Netflix, to the thing he needed to do, exercise. As one fan apparently put it, he was eliminating obesity one Netflix binge at a time.
That's genius. It's like combining habit stacking with this attractiveness principle. Is there a formula for that?
There is, and it makes it really actionable. You can combine habit stacking and temptation bundling like this. 1, after current habit, I will habit I need. 2, after habit I need, I will habit I want.
Okay, let's try an example, maybe. After I get my morning coffee, current habit, I will write down one thing I'm grateful for. Habit I need.
Good start. Now add the want.
After I write down one thing I'm grateful for, I will check my favorite news website. Habit I want.
Perfect. Or maybe. After I get back from my lunch break, current habit, I will call 3 potential clients. Need. After I call 3 potential clients, I will check ESPN for 15 minutes. Want.
You're linking an immediate reward you desire to the completion of a habit you know you should do.
That makes the need habit much more appealing because it unlocks the want habit.
Okay, another really powerful strategy to make habits attractive is to consciously use social norms to your advantage. You mentioned earlier, as humans, we have this incredibly deep, inherent desire to fit in, to bond with others, and earn the approval of our peers.
It's baked into our DNA. For most of human evolutionary history, being ostracized or separated from the tribe was basically a death sentence. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives, as they say. This fundamental drive makes us incredibly sensitive and susceptible to the norms of our culture, and especially the behaviors of those closest to us, our family, friends, colleagues.
Like that truly fascinating story, the Polgar sisters.
Yeah.
The chess prodigies.
Oh, it's an incredible testament to this principle. Laszlo Polgar, this Hungarian educational psychologist back in the 1960s, had a radical belief. He firmly believed that genius was made, not born, that it was all about hard work and the right environment, completely rejecting the idea of innate talent.
So he set out to prove it.
He did. He literally advertised for a wife who shared his educational views. He found Clara, They married, and together they meticulously planned to raise their children to be geniuses, specifically in the field of chess. They homeschooled their three daughters, Susan, Sophia, and Judith, and their home was absolutely saturated with chess. Chess books lined the shelves, famous players' pictures were on the walls, the girls played constantly against each other, and their parents competed in top tournaments from a young age.
And the results were just staggering, weren't they?
Unbelievable. All three became chess champions. Susan was the first woman to earn the Grandmaster title through traditional tournament play. Sophia was ranked sixth best woman player globally at her peak. And Judith, the youngest, was simply phenomenal. She could beat her father by age 5, was the youngest player ever to crack the top 100 world rankings, and at 15 years and 4 months old, she became the youngest grandmaster of all time, male or female, breaking Bobby Fischer's record. She was the #1 ranked woman player for over 25 years.
Wow. But what's the key insight here regarding social norms and attractiveness? Was it just the intense practice?
The practice was essential, obviously, but the crucial element was the culture they created. In their family, an intense obsession with chess wasn't weird, it was normal. It was praised, rewarded, celebrated. Their environment made chess the most attractive thing to do. Judith apparently once complained, "Daddy, leave me alone, they are bothering me," referring to her sisters, "I want to work." Chess was their world.
So the lesson is, being immersed in a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior makes it incredibly attractive to adopt that behavior yourself.
Absolutely. We soak up the habits and standards of the groups we belong to. We tend to imitate those closest to us. If your coworkers have a strong work ethic, you're more likely to push yourself. If your friends all smoke pot, you're more likely to try it. If your spouse has a habit of double-checking that the door is locked, you might pick it up too.
There's that enviable peer pressure at play. I remember reading about a study on obesity.
Yes, the Framingham Heart Study follow-up showed a person's chances of becoming obese increased by 57% if they had a friend who became obese.
57%. That's huge.
It is. And conversely, if one partner in a relationship lost weight, the other partner would also slim down about a third of the time. Our social connections profoundly shape our behaviors, often without us even realizing it.
So strategically, we can leverage this by joining groups where our desired behavior is the norm.
Exactly. Join a running club if you want to become a runner. Join a book club if you want to read more. Join a healthy cooking class if you want to eat better. Even better if you can find a group where you already have something else in common. Steve Camm's nerd fitness community is a brilliant example.
Right, helping nerds, misfits, and mutants lose weight.
Yeah. If you love video games or sci-fi, finding a fitness community that shares those interests makes getting in shape feel much more attractive and less intimidating, because it feels like something people like you already do. Belonging to the tribe is perhaps the most powerful motivator there is. It transforms a personal quest into a shared one, and it reinforces your personal identity. We are readers, we are cyclists, we are healthy eaters.
But trying to go against the grain of your culture, your tribe, that requires extra effort, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It requires constant vigilance and energy. Most days, honestly, we'd rather be wrong with the crowd than right alone. The desire to belong usually trumps the desire to be correct or optimal.
Okay, one last strategy for making habits attractive. Reframing your habits and association. This goes back to the idea that the prediction before the habit is what really drives the craving.
That's right. The cause of your habits is actually the prediction that precedes them. Two people can look at the exact same cue, say, a cigarette. For one person, it triggers an intense craving to smoke. For the other, maybe an ex-smoker, it triggers feelings of disgust and repulsion. Same cue, totally different prediction and resulting feeling.
So we can consciously reprogram these predictions, reframe how we think about a habit.
Yes. By highlighting the benefits of our good habits rather than their drawbacks, instead of thinking, ugh, I need to go run now, you can reframe it as, it's time to build endurance and get faster.
Or instead of seeing saving money as a sacrifice.
Reframe it as freedom. Living below my current means increases my future means. The money you save this month increases your purchasing power and options next month. It's not deprivation, it's enabling future possibilities. It completely changes your perception and makes the act of saving feel more attractive, more empowering.
It's like how athletes often use pre-game rituals, right? It's not just superstition, it's about creating an association.
Exactly. The author talks about his own baseball career. He developed this specific 10-minute stretching and throwing sequence he did before every single game. Physically, it warmed him up, sure, But more importantly, mentally, it became his trigger to get into the right state. He began to associate that ritual with feeling competitive, focused, ready. Even if he wasn't feeling motivated beforehand, by the time he finished that familiar sequence, he was in game mode.
So how we feel influences how we act, but also how we act influences how we feel.
It's a feedback loop. By deliberately reframing the associations you have with a habit, you can transform it from something that feels like a chore into something that feels attractive, something you look forward to because of the state it puts you in or the benefits you focus on.
Okay, so we've covered making habits obvious and making them attractive. But what if the sheer difficulty of a new habit is the biggest hurdle? Even if it's obvious and attractive, if it feels too hard, we might still avoid it. That brings us to a surprisingly, maybe counterintuitive principle. The third law, make it easy.
It does seem counterintuitive sometimes, doesn't it? We often glorify hard work and effort, but the core idea here is actually about prioritizing repetition over perfection, especially when starting out.
Could you give an example of that?
Yeah, there's a great story about a photography professor, Jerry Ilsman, at the University of Florida. On the first day of class, he divided his film photography students into two groups. One group, he told them, would be the quantity group. They'd be graded solely on the amount of work they produced. 100 photos submitted would get an A, 90 photos a B, and so on.
It's pure output.
Right. The other group was the quality group. They only needed to produce one single photo during the semester, but to get an A, it had to be a nearly perfect image.
Interesting experiment. What happened?
At the end of the term, Yulsman was surprised to find that all the best photos were produced by the quantity group.
Really? Not the ones focused on perfection?
Nope. While the quantity group was busy churning out photos, experimenting with composition and lighting, testing different methods in the darkroom, and learning from their mistakes through sheer volume, the quality group had mostly sat around speculating about perfection. They theorized about what made a great shot, but they had little tangible evidence or practice to show for it. They were paralyzed by the pursuit of perfection.
That's fascinating. It highlights that it's not necessarily about how long you've been doing something, but how frequently you do it. The reps matter more than the duration, at least initially.
Exactly. Your current habits, the ones that feel automatic, are ingrained because you've performed them hundreds, maybe thousands of times. New habits need that same level of frequency to become embedded. You need to string together enough successful attempts, even small ones, until the behavior feels normal, automatic, easy.
This ties into a fundamental principle of human behavior, the law of least effort.
It does. Human nature, fundamentally, dictates that we are wired to conserve energy. We are motivated to do what is easy and convenient. Given two similar options, people will naturally gravitate toward the one that requires the least amount of work. It's why farmers, historically, would expand their farms into land with a similar climate rather than moving to a completely different one, even if the new climate might be better overall. The path of least resistance wins out.
So, while we're certainly capable of doing really hard things like raising a family or writing a book or climbing Mount Everest,
Absolutely capable.
on those tough days, those days when we're tired or stressed, we need every advantage we can get.
That's the crucial point. The less friction you face in doing a good habit, the easier it is for your stronger self, your better intentions, to emerge. The idea isn't that you should only do easy things. It's about making the things that pay off in the long run as easy as possible in the moment of decision.
It's like that garden hose analogy the author uses.
Yeah, it's a great visual. Trying to pump up your motivation to stick with a really hard habit is like trying to force water through a garden hose that's badly bent in the middle. You can crank up the pressure at the valve, increase motivation, but it takes a lot of effort and not much water gets through.
Right.
Making your habits simple and easy, reducing the friction, is like removing the bend in the hose. Suddenly, the water flows naturally without all that extra force. You're working with human nature, not against it.
So how do we practically remove that friction? One way is through environment design again, but this time focusing specifically on ease.
Exactly. We talked about making cues obvious through environment, but you can also design it to make the action easier. For example, if you want to go to the gym more often, choosing a gym that's literally on your route to or from work dramatically reduces the friction compared to one that's out of the way. Habits are just easier to build when they fit seamlessly into the flow of your existing life.
It's like the concept of lean production in Japanese factories.
Very similar thinking. In the 1970s and 80s, Japanese companies revolutionized manufacturing by meticulously redesigning workspaces to eliminate waste, unnecessary movement, and complexity. Everything was optimized to make the core tasks as smooth and easy as possible. American factories, meanwhile, often had much more cumbersome processes. The result was Japanese companies dramatically outpacing their competitors in efficiency and quality. They removed the friction.
And technology often acts as a friction reducer too, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse.
Absolutely. Think about voice-activated speakers. Saying, play some country music is significantly easier, requires less friction than pulling out your phone, unlocking it, opening a music app, searching, and hitting play. Or remember that British government example about increasing tax collection rates?
Yeah, just linking directly to the form instead of a page with the form.
Right. Reducing that one tiny step, that little bit of friction, increased the response rate significantly, bringing in millions more in revenue. The central idea is always create an environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible. Reduce the number of steps between you and the good habit.
And conversely, we can use the inversion of this law, make it difficult to break bad habits, right?
Yeah.
By intentionally adding friction.
Precisely. This is where making bad habits difficult or even invisible, inversion of the first law, comes in. Take the famous story of Victor Hugo. In 1830, he was facing the seemingly impossible deadline to finish his novel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
He was procrastinating badly, apparently.
Terribly. So what did he do? He gathered up all his clothes, asked his assistant to lock them away, and was left with nothing to wear except a large shawl. Lacking any suitable clothing to go outside, he was essentially forced to stay in his study and write.
That's extreme, but it worked.
It worked brilliantly. He finished the book 2 weeks ahead of schedule. He created what we now call a commitment device.
A commitment device. So that's a choice you make in the present that controls your actions in the future. It locks you into good habits or restricts you from bad ones.
Exactly. It's about increasing the friction for undesirable actions. Other examples might be buying food in individual packages rather than family size to reduce the temptation to overeat, or voluntarily banning yourself from online gambling sites or casinos, or maybe athletes leaving their wallets at home when they go out so they're not tempted by fast food.
There's also that great historical example of John Henry Patterson and the cash register.
Oh, fantastic example of automating good behavior by making bad behavior difficult. Patterson owned this struggling general store for coal miners in the 1880s. He realized his employees were stealing from the till, pocketing cash from sales.
So what was his solution?
He bought one of the newly invented cash registers for $50. Overnight, employee theft vanished because every transaction was now recorded. His business immediately turned profitable. The register essentially automated ethical behavior by making stealing practically impossible without getting caught. It drastically increased the friction for the bad habit.
So these commitment devices and things like automating good habits, setting up automatic savings plans, automatic bill pay, maybe cutting cable TV entirely, they're like one-time choices that lock in future benefits.
Yes, exactly. They often require some effort up front, setting up the automation, buying the commitment device, rearranging the environment, but they deliver increasing value over time by making the right behaviors easier and the wrong behaviors harder, day after day. Alfred North Whitehead, the philosopher, famously said, "Civilization advances by extending the number of operations which we can perform without thinking about them. Automation and commitment devices do that on a personal level."
So making bad habits invisible, unplugging the video game console and putting it in a closet, taking the batteries out of the TV remote, leaving your phone in a different room when you need to focus, these all can be surprisingly effective ways to increase friction.
They really can. Because the ultimate takeaway here is that relying on self-control alone is generally a short-term strategy, not a long-term one. You might resist temptation once or twice using sheer willpower, but you probably can't summon a new dose of willpower every single time you face that cue, day after day. Your energy is usually better spent optimizing your environment and adding friction to make the bad habits harder to do in the first place.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now finally, under this law of make it easy, there's a very specific, very practical technique, the 2-minute rule.
Ah, yes, the 2-minute rule. It's beautifully simple but incredibly effective for overcoming procrastination and just getting started. The rule states, when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do.
Less than 2 minutes. They're like really small.
Really small. Almost ridiculously small sometimes. So, read before bed each night. becomes read one page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat. Study for class becomes open my notes. Run 3 miles becomes put on my running shoes.
This sounds almost too simple, but I can see how it works. I used to dread the idea of doing a full workout, but just committing to putting on my running shoes, even if I told myself I didn't have to go further,
Yeah.
that completely shifted my mindset. 9 times out of 10, once the shoes are on, I'd at least go for a short run.
That's exactly it. The point of the 2-minute rule isn't really about the 2 minutes itself. The point is to master the habit of showing up. A habit has to be established before it can be improved. You need to standardize the behavior before you can optimize it.
So it's about building the identity first. Showing up casts the vote.
Precisely. Showing up for just 2 minutes at the gym, even if you barely break a sweat, still casts a vote for becoming the type of person who doesn't miss workouts. Reading 1 page casts a vote for being a reader. Taking out your yoga mat casts a vote for being someone who does yoga. It reinforces your desired identity at the most fundamental level, the level of starting. And honestly, it's far better to do less than you hoped than to do nothing at all. Momentum is key.
You have to standardize before you can optimize. I like that. You can't improve a habit that doesn't exist yet.
Exactly. Master the art of showing up first. Then you can worry about making it longer or better later.
Okay, for making it easy, we arrive at the 4th and final law. Make it satisfying. This one feels pretty intuitive, doesn't it? We all tend to repeat things that feel good and avoid things that feel bad.
It's deeply intuitive, yes. The cardinal rule of behavior change is crystal clear. What is rewarded is repeated. What is punished is avoided. Our brains are fundamentally pleasure-seeking and pain-avoiding machines.
There was that study about hand washing in Pakistan that really illustrated this, right?
Oh, yes. Stephen Luby's work in Karachi back in the late 1990s. It's a powerful example. Karachi was facing huge problems with widespread illness, largely due to poor sanitation and hygiene. Luby and his public health team knew that regular hand washing with soap could make a massive difference.
But that's a classic challenge in public health, isn't it? Getting people to consistently do something they already know is good for them, like flossing or eating vegetables.
Exactly. The residents in Karachi knew hand washing was important. The knowledge wasn't the issue. The problem was consistency. People would wash maybe sometimes or haphazardly or just forget. It wasn't an ingrained habit.
So what was the critical insight or the change they made that actually made hand washing stick?
Well, they partnered with Procter & Gamble, the consumer goods giant, to supply a particular brand of soap, Safeguard, to the neighborhood they were studying. Now, unlike the standard basic soap available, Safeguard was designed to be more, pleasant. It foamed up really easily. It had a nice smell.
So it made the experience of washing hands slightly more enjoyable.
Exactly. Instantly, the simple act of hand washing became slightly more pleasurable, more satisfying from a sensory perspective. Luby himself said their goal wasn't just behavior change in the short term, but achieving long-term habit adoption. And he noted it's far easier for people to adopt a product or behavior that provides a strong, positive sensory signal, like the minty taste and clean feeling from toothpaste, than one that lacks immediate pleasurable feedback, like, say, flossing, which often feels like a chore.
Does the marketing team focus on creating a positive hand-washing experience?
Yes. And it worked. Rates of hand washing increased significantly, and related illnesses like diarrhea and pneumonia dropped dramatically in the study group compared to controls. When an experience is satisfying, we simply have a stronger, more immediate reason to repeat it.
That brings us right back to that crucial point we touched on earlier, the inherent mismatch between immediate versus delayed rewards, which our ancient brains really struggle with in modern society.
It's such a fundamental challenge. Our brains evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in what scientists call an immediate return environment. Imagine yourself as one of our ancestors on the African plains. Most of your decisions had an immediate impact on your survival. Finding food, eating it now, seeing a predator, running away now, feeling tired, sleeping now. The feedback was instant.
But modern society is largely a delayed return environment.
Exactly. So many of the choices that lead to long-term success today don't benefit you immediately. You work hard today, but your paycheck comes in weeks. You exercise today, but you might not see significant fitness gains for months. You save money today for retirement, which is decades away.
And our brains, which evolved for those quick payoffs, they just aren't naturally wired for that kind of delay.
Not inherently, no. They prioritize immediate gratification. This is why success in nearly every modern field career, health, finance, relationships, requires us to consciously override that impulse, to ignore an immediate reward, like watching TV, for a delayed one, like finishing a project or going to the gym. And studies consistently show that people who are better at delaying gratification tend to have higher SAT scores, lower rates of substance abuse, lower obesity rates, better responses to stress, and even superior social skills. It's a fundamental predictor of success in our modern world.
So given this mismatch, how do we make our good habits, the ones with delayed payoffs, feel satisfying now? That leads to the first strategy under this law, making good habits immediately satisfying.
Yes. The vital thing in getting a habit to stick, especially in the beginning, is to feel successful, even if it's just in a small way, right away. In those initial stages, good habits often feel like pure sacrifice, don't they? You go to the gym a few times, but you're not noticeably stronger or fitter yet. You resist the dessert, but the scale hasn't budged.
Yeah, it feels like all cost and no benefit at first.
Exactly. You need a reason to stay on track until those delayed rewards finally start to accumulate and become motivating in their own right. This is where engineering immediate rewards becomes absolutely essential. They keep you excited, they provide that little hit of satisfaction, while the bigger long-term benefits are still brewing in the background.
But it's really important that these short-term rewards actually align with your desired identity, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to accidentally undermine your long-term goals with the reward itself.
Oh, that's crucial. You hit the nail on the head. For example, rewarding yourself with a relaxing massage after a week of consistent exercise is a great example. A massage feels like a luxury. It reinforces the idea of taking care of your body. It aligns perfectly with the goal of being healthy.
Okay. But rewarding yourself for exercising by eating a big bowl of ice cream.
That creates conflicting identities. It sends mixed signals. You're casting a vote for being healthy with the exercise, but then immediately casting a vote for indulgence that might contradict that. The short-term reward should ideally reinforce your long-term vision of who you want to become, not clash with it.
That makes sense. Okay, the next strategy for making habits satisfying is habit tracking. Just the simple act of measuring your progress seems to provide its own reward.
It absolutely does. Tracking provides clear visual proof that you're moving forward, even if the progress feels slow day to day. It taps into our desire for achievement and feedback. Think of Trent Dyersman's famous paperclip strategy.
Right, the stockbroker with the 2 jars.
Exactly. He started each morning with 120 paper clips in one jar. After he made a sales call, he'd simply move one paper clip to the second jar. That simple visual cue, watching the second jar fill up, kept him focused on his output and provided immediate, tangible evidence of his effort throughout the day. It was satisfying to see the progress.
Benjamin Franklin did something similar, didn't he? With his little journal, tracking his progress on his list of virtues.
He did. The benefits are clear. Tracking makes your progress obvious, it makes it attractive, you want to keep the streak going, and it makes it immediately satisfying to mark off another day or another rep. It creates this positive, addictive feedback loop.
And nowadays, a lot of this tracking can even be automated, which makes it even easier. Your credit card statement tracks spending, your fitness tracker logs steps and sleep, your work calendar might record completed projects.
Yes, technology can definitely help automate the measurement, removing even that friction. But beyond just tracking, there's a really crucial mindset related to consistency. The never miss twice rule.
Ah, okay. What's the idea behind that?
The idea is simple. Life happens. You're going to miss a workout sometimes. You'll slip up on your diet. You'll forget to meditate one morning. That's inevitable. The key is not to let one missed day spiral into completely falling off the wagon. If you miss one day, make it your absolute priority to get back into it the very next day or as quickly as possible.
So missing once is an accident.
Missing twice is the beginning of a new, undesirable habit. Truly successful people aren't necessarily the ones who never fail. They're the ones who rebound quickly. The breaking of a habit doesn't matter nearly as much as how quickly you reclaim it. Don't let a small slip turn into a total derailment.
That's a really forgiving but powerful way to think about consistency. But when we're tracking, we also have to be careful not to fall into the trap of measuring the wrong thing, right? Because of Goodhart's law.
Ah, yes, Goodhart's law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. This is a classic pitfall. If you optimize solely for a specific metric, people will find ways to hit that metric, even if it means sacrificing the underlying goal the metric was supposed to represent.
Like a restaurant owner who only tracks daily revenue. What might they be missing?
Well, just because someone pays for a meal doesn't mean they actually enjoyed it or will ever come back. If you only measure revenue, the quality of the food or service could be declining, but maybe you're masking it temporarily with aggressive marketing or discounts. It might be more effective long-term to track metrics that better reflect true customer satisfaction, like, say, how many customers finish their entire meal, or the percentage who leave a generous tip, or repeat visit rates. You need to ensure your chosen measure truly reflects the ultimate outcome you desire, not just an easily gameable proxy.
Okay, that's a critical nuance. Finally, the ultimate strategy for making habits satisfying, or maybe more accurately, making bad habits immediately unsatisfying, involves using an accountability partner or contract. This is essentially the inversion of the fourth law.
Yes, it leverages the other side of the coin. We avoid pain and punishment. This concept can be quite provocative, as illustrated by Roger Fisher's idea from the 1970s regarding nuclear war prevention.
Right, the Harvard negotiation expert with the truly chilling proposal.
Yeah, he observed that a president could launch nuclear missiles, potentially killing millions, from the sterile safety of a bunker thousands of miles away, completely disconnected from the immediate human cost. His radical suggestion: put the nuclear launch codes inside a small capsule implanted right next to the heart of a volunteer aide.
Oh my gosh.
And this aide would carry a large butcher knife and accompany the president at all times. If the president ever wanted to launch the missiles, he would first, with his own hands, have to kill this specific human being to retrieve the codes.
Blood on the White House carpet. It's reality brought home. That was the quote, wasn't it?
That was the quote. His point was to make the consequences immediate, visceral, and personal. His Pentagon friends apparently told him, "My God, that's terrible. Having to kill someone would distort the president's judgment. He might never push the button," which of course was precisely Fisher's point.
It's a truly extreme example, but it perfectly illustrates the incredible power of immediate and severe consequences in shaping behavior. How does this translate to something less apocalyptic, like a personal habit?
Well, it highlights the core insight. Just as we instinctively repeat satisfying experiences, we instinctively avoid painful ones. Pain is an incredibly effective teacher. When mistakes are immediate and costly, we learn very quickly not to repeat them. Think about a plumber who installs a pipe incorrectly and causes a major flood. The consequence is immediate and severe, they learn fast. Or a restaurant that serves bad food and gets terrible reviews, instantly they adapt or fail. Or a surgeon cutting the wrong blood vessel, the feedback is immediate and dire. When consequences are swift and significant, people learn and adjust their behavior quickly.
And laws and regulations often work this way too, right? Like seatbelt laws. They create a social contract with immediate penalties for non-compliance.
Exactly. Society agrees on certain rules for the common good, and the group enforces punishments, like fines or points on your license, for breaking them. This dramatically changes behavior because it makes the undesirable action immediately costly.
So how can we apply this principle individually? That's where the habit contract comes in.
Precisely. A habit contract is basically a formal agreement, either verbal or written, where you explicitly state your commitment to a particular habit and, crucially, outline the punishment or negative consequence that will occur if you fail to follow through. And ideally, you sign this contract with one or more accountability partners who will help enforce it.
Can you give an example of how someone used this effectively?
Yeah, Brian Harris, an entrepreneur from Nashville, used this strategy very effectively to lose weight after his first son was born. He felt he needed serious structure, so he created a detailed contract involving himself, his wife, and his personal trainer as accountability partners.
What did the contract specify?
It laid out his high-level goals, like getting back to a certain weight and body fat percentage. But more importantly, it detailed the specific daily habits required, things like tracking all his food intake in an app and weighing himself every single day. And then came the key part: the immediate punishments for failure.
What were the punishments?
They were designed to be immediately embarrassing or annoying. If he failed to log his food or weigh himself on any given day, the first penalty was he'd have to dress up in full work attire the entire next day, including weekends. If he failed again, he'd have to pay his trainer $200. Later, if he missed his weekly sprint goals, the penalty was wearing an Alabama Crimson Tide hat — he's an Auburn fan — every day for the following week.
Ouch. Those are definitely immediate and undesirable consequences. What was his experience with it?
His initial reaction was that it felt overly formal and maybe a bit silly. But he quickly realized that the act of actually writing it down and signing it was a powerful indication of seriousness. He found that any time he tried to implement a habit change without that formal contract and accountability, he'd start slacking off almost immediately.
So Brian's success wasn't just about finding more willpower. It was about deliberately creating an environment where the cost of not doing the desired habit was immediate, tangible, and significant.
Exactly. Knowing that someone else is watching, that there's a pre-agreed consequence for failure provides incredibly powerful motivation. You're much less likely to procrastinate or give up because there's an immediate social cost. You don't want to look untrustworthy or lazy or have to face that unpleasant penalty. You're not just failing yourself in the abstract future, you're facing a concrete consequence right now.
You're essentially shifting the pain of inaction from the distant, vague future right into the present moment.
That's the power of it, making the consequences of bad habits immediate and unsatisfying.
Okay, so we've journeyed through the 4 fundamental laws. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. These give us a really robust framework for building good habits and breaking bad ones. But how do we sustain motivation and keep progressing over the long haul, especially when things get tough or boring? This brings us to some more advanced strategies for lasting change.
Right, because starting is one thing, but sticking with it is another. The first thing to acknowledge, and it's becoming increasingly clear from research, is the significant role of our genes and personality.
So nature versus nurture.
Well, it's always both, but genes play a massive role in predisposing us towards certain traits and behaviors. Research by behavioral geneticists like Robert Plumman suggests that genes influence almost everything, from obvious things like height and eye color to less obvious ones like how much TV you're likely to watch, your political leanings, or your susceptibility to addiction.
Wow, really? It's that pervasive.
The evidence is pretty overwhelming. Plowman notes that it's now at the point where scientists literally can't find a single psychological trait that isn't significantly influenced by our genes. This doesn't mean genes are destiny, but they do shape our underlying talents, temperaments, and preferences.
Okay, that's a powerful statement about the role of nature. So how do we work with our genetic predispositions rather than constantly fighting against them when we're trying to build habits? For instance, if someone is naturally, say, less conscientious or more easily distracted, how do they find success?
That's the key question. You don't have to apologize for these innate differences, but you absolutely do have to work with them. If you know you're naturally less conscientious, you might need to rely more heavily on strategies like environment design, making the desired action almost unavoidable, or commitment devices, because relying solely on internal discipline might be fighting an uphill battle against your nature.
So it's about self-awareness and tailoring the strategies.
Exactly. And this leads directly into the importance of choosing the right opportunities, or you could say picking the right game to play. Where do your natural inclinations give you an edge? Where do you get greater returns than the average person for the same amount of effort? What activities make you feel energized and engaged rather than drained?
So asking yourself questions like, what comes naturally to me? Or when have I felt alive? When have I felt like the real me?
Yes. Ignoring societal pressures about what you should be good at and focusing instead on activities that align with your inherent strengths and interests is crucial for long-term sustainability and satisfaction.
Scott Adams, the creator of the Dilbert comic strip, has a great take on this. He talks about his combination of skills strategy.
Right. He acknowledges he might not be the single funniest stand-up comedian in the world, nor the best artist, nor the most brilliant business mind. But he can draw reasonably well, he can write jokes, and he has a solid business background from his corporate days. That specific combination of skills is actually quite rare.
So when you can't win by being better, you can sometimes win by being different. Specialization or combining skills in a unique way.
Exactly. Find your niche where your unique blend of talents gives you an advantage. It's like that boiling water analogy the author uses. Boiling water softens a potato but hardens an egg. You can't really control whether you're fundamentally more like a potato or an egg in a given situation. But you can decide whether you want to play a game where it's better to be hard or where it's better to be soft. Find an environment, a field, a challenge where your natural tendencies work for you, not against you. Genes don't eliminate the need for hard work, not at all. But they can help clarify what is likely to be the most rewarding and sustainable thing for you to work hard on.
Okay, finding the right game to play. Then there's the challenge of staying motivated within that game. This leads to the Goldilocks rule, staying motivated by optimal challenge.
Yes. Peak motivation often occurs when you're working on tasks that are right on the edge of your current abilities. Not too hard that you get overwhelmed and give up, but not too easy that you get bored and complacent. It has to be just right, like Goldilocks porridge.
Like Steve Martin's long journey in comedy, it wasn't overnight success.
Not at all. He spent something like 18 years honing his craft, experimenting, learning, constantly pushing his boundaries, but staying within that zone of manageable difficulty before he achieved that massive, wild and crazy guy success. Success in almost any field requires this delicate balance. You need to constantly search for challenges that stretch you, but are still achievable enough to keep you engaged and motivated. In psychology, this is related to the Yerkes-Dodson law, which shows performance improves with arousal or challenge, but only up to a certain point, after which it declines.
So behaviors need to remain novel and challenging enough to stay attractive and satisfying.
To some extent, yes. Without variety or a sense of progress, we inevitably get bored. And boredom, surprisingly, is perhaps the greatest villain in the quest for self-improvement and mastery. It's often boredom, not failure, that causes people to give up.
Which leads to maybe the toughest challenge of all for long-term habits, falling in love with boredom.
It sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? But a weightlifting coach once told the author something profound. Truly successful people, the elite performers, feel the same lack of motivation and boredom as everyone else. The difference is, they still find a way to show up and put in the reps despite those feelings.
So mastery requires practice, endless practice, but practice inevitably becomes boring and routine after a while.
Absolutely. The initial excitement fades, the novelty wears off, you hit plateaus. And this is the point where most people quit. The only way to push through and reach higher levels of performance is to embrace the routine, to find satisfaction in the process itself, even when it's monotonous.
Is this where something like variable rewards can sometimes help, like with slot machines?
Variable rewards can definitely amplify cravings and keep things interesting, as B.F. Skinner discovered somewhat accidentally with his rats. When rewards are unpredictable, dopamine levels stay higher in anticipation. Slot machines are masters of this, often designed for roughly a 50-50 split between winning and losing on any given pull, which seems to maximize desire. However, you can't really build variable rewards into every habit, nor would you necessarily want to.
So the core message remains.
The core message is, no habit will stay interesting and exciting forever. At some point, everyone faces the same challenge on the journey of self-improvement. You simply have to fall in love with boredom. You have to be willing to put in the work, do the reps, show up, even when the mood isn't right, even when you'd rather be doing anything else. The only way to become truly excellent at something is to be endlessly fascinated by doing the same thing over and over, focusing on those tiny refinements.
That's a demanding but realistic perspective. And to ensure you stay on track during those inevitable plateaus or moments of boredom, there's the critical practice of periodic review and reflection.
Yes, taking time to consciously review your progress or lack thereof is vital for sustained effort. Pat Riley, the legendary coach of the Los Angeles Lakers in the 1980s, implemented a brilliant system called Career Best Effort, or CBE.
What did that involve?
After each game, they didn't just look at points scored. They meticulously calculated detailed stats for every player, rebounds, assists, steals, turnovers, but also effort plays, the unsung hero stuff like diving for loose balls, helping teammates, taking charges. They then compared each player's performance not just against their opponents, but against their own previous best efforts, aiming for just a 1% improvement across the board.
So they were tracking tiny incremental gains based on personal bests.
Exactly. They also emphasized year-over-year progress, comparing, say, November 1986's team performance against November 1985's. They created this culture of constant, measurable improvement. The result: the Lakers became the first NBA team in nearly 20 years to win back-to-back championships. Riley's takeaway was clear. Sustaining an effort is the most important thing for any enterprise. Learn how to do things right, then do them the same way every time.
And this isn't just for sports teams, right? This principle of review applies anywhere.
Oh, absolutely. Comedian Chris Rock famously tests hundreds, maybe thousands of jokes in small comedy clubs, meticulously using a notepad to record what works and what doesn't, constantly refining his material based on audience feedback. Many successful executives keep decision journals to log their reasoning behind important choices so they can review them later, learn from mistakes, and improve their judgment.
The author mentions he does something similar with an annual integrity report.
Yes, he takes time each year to revisit his core values, honestly assess how his actions over the past year have aligned with those values, where he lived with integrity and where he fell short, and then sets higher standards for himself for the coming year.
So these periodic reviews, even if it's just a few hours once or twice a year, are crucial.
They are absolutely crucial. They prevent that gradual slide, that slow drift away from your intentions that can happen when you're not paying close attention. They provide a built-in mechanism to check if your habits are still serving you, to revisit your desired identity, and to consciously decide when to upgrade your efforts, dial things back, or maybe change course entirely based on what you've learned.
And this ties back beautifully to the final point about the fluidity of identity. Our identity isn't set in stone.
Not at all. And this can be a real challenge, actually, especially when a core identity that has defined someone for years suddenly disappears. Think of a professional athlete whose career ends due to injury or retirement, or a long-serving military veteran leaving the service, or a CEO who sells their company. When your whole life, your whole sense of self has been wrapped up in that one role and suddenly it's gone. Who are you now? It can trigger an identity crisis.
So becoming the best version of yourself isn't about reaching some fixed endpoint.
No. It requires you to continuously edit your beliefs about yourself, to upgrade and expand your identity as you learn and grow, and your circumstances change. Your identity is not this static thing. It's a fluid, evolving narrative that you are constantly shaping through your actions, your habits, and your reflections.
Wow. Okay, throughout this deep dive, we've really covered a lot of ground. Dozens of insights, fascinating stories from Olympic champions and business leaders to comedians and artists. But the underlying thread seems remarkably consistent.
It really is. All of them, in their own ways, progressed fundamentally through a deep commitment to tiny, sustainable, often unrelenting improvements, day after day, week after week.
It's truly remarkable what you can build if you just don't stop. Whether that's a successful business or a strong, healthy body or a vast base of knowledge or deep, meaningful friendships, it all comes back to those small, consistent actions. So here's something for you, the listener, to ponder as you go about your day.
Consider this. What is one small, truly atomic habit that you could begin today, something that takes less than 2 minutes? Maybe that if you were to stick with it, if it were allowed to compound over months and years, would fundamentally change the trajectory of your life. What habit could start making you into the person you truly aspire to be, even if the progress isn't immediately obvious?
Because remember that core message.
Small habits don't just add up, they compound. Consistent, tiny, unrelenting improvements, that's the real secret to achieving remarkable, lasting results.